All right, welcome to another episode of the James Spearman Show. And today we've got another exciting guest, and happy to have her on the show. I've actually been following her content for a while, and before we came on, I didn't get your last name all the way down, so I'm not going to mess it up. But I know your first name's Carly. How do you say your last name?
It's Chamerlik, so Awesome. It's pretty much exactly how it looks.
Okay, I just don't want to make a fool of myself.
I get it. It's an intimidating one.
Carly, thank you so much for being on the show and joining in.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. What's that? Hey, where do people follow you? Are you most active on Instagram or Facebook, or just you send it out on all of them?
Yeah, I kind of got my start on TikTok, but I've been on Instagram the longest. And so my main audience is really on Instagram, but I try to dip my toe in all of them. I'm newer to YouTube, but I hear that's where the people are, so I'm trying to be there too. But
well, one person told me, they're like, well, James, but most of the audience in aviation is, hate to, they're mostly middle-aged men, right?
You're not wrong.
And so they all live on Facebook.
Yeah, I started just letting my Instagram reels get automatically posted to Facebook, so it's like it's not like a fourth thing I have to think about. It's just it just
auto does
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I will tell you, the community is growing a lot, right? Like, I went through Air Force pilot training, and there were several women in my class that graduated with me, and it's awesome. I think for people out in aviation like yourself that are really casting that net and showing like this career path is viable for women, right? And Women in Aviation does an awesome job in their organization. I'm a card carrying Women in Aviation myself. So I'm really gracious for what you do, and I think you do an awesome job.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, and I always make a point to say when I'm talking about scholarships and things like that too, that those organizations are for everybody. So it's great that you're a member. We welcome everyone.
So normally how I start out the show, Carly, is, there's normally this like one moment that really like kind of that gets you hooked into aviation. For me, my dad took me to an air show when I was in middle school, and a lady let me sit in her 172. And then I was just like, bam, that's it. I'm hooked. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm pretty sure it's airplanes in some form or capacity. What was it for you that really got you to start pursuing aviation?
So for me, it was really, I didn't know that I was going to become a pilot until I was in my mid-20s. But really what got me started in aviation was growing up, my uncle was a captain for American, and he was flying the 777 out of Chicago. So I saw him taking my cousins to London and, Hong Kong, and they would go all these amazing places. I remember he flew to Delhi a lot. And would just always go incredible places all over the world. And that's really what got me excited about aviation, was just the aspect of travel. So I started traveling a lot right out of high school and just was doing as much of it as I could. I spent about 7 months just going everywhere. I've spent like a few months in Germany, a few months in India, all over Europe and kind of Southeast Asia, and just could not get enough of it. So I actually got my bachelor's degree in fine art, of all things, and I studied painting in France for a semester. So that was another little bit of travel I got to do that really got me hooked. And after college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I could work in marketing. I tried that out for a little bit. I worked in, like media and retail, and just tried a little bit of everything. But then I thought, I'm just gonna have a reset year. I'm gonna go become a flight attendant, just travel, because that's what I love to do. And then, I was like 25 at the time, so I thought I'll just come back, figure out what I'm gonna do from there. A lot of flight attendants have that story. I've found that they say they're going to do it for a year and then they're hooked, and it's, no going back from there. So that's kind of what happened to me. But it was really just a few weeks into being a flight attendant. I started mainline right away with United, and that was late 2018. And really just a few weeks into the job at the beginning of 2019, I started feeling like, I love this lifestyle, but the guys up front, I started hearing them talking about their paychecks. I'm like, they're making literally 8 times more than me for this same experience, but they're having a way better time up there. It's more of, more mentally engaging. They're having more of like a problem solving kind of job. And just, it seemed really cool. I felt like I have no background in science or aerospace or anything. I'm an art major, but I feel like I'm smart enough, like I could do that. So I took a discovery flight in the spring of 2019, and actually my cousin had also been a flight attendant, and she married a JetBlue pilot. So the JetBlue pilot, he was still a CFI, still held his current CFI. So he took me up in North Carolina, and we just flew around for like an hour, got lunch, and in a Cessna 172, and I loved it. I think that experience really showed me that I could do flight training, because I had the thought, like, what if I'm terrified? I've never been in a plane this size. I've always just worked in the back of Boeings and Airbuses, so I don't really know what that experience will be like. But it was just like, as soon as we lifted off, it was just like instant calm. I mean, it was also perfect conditions. There was no turbulence or anything. So I think it was the perfect introductory flight for me to have, where I was just like, that's easy. It was great. So I started kind of making plans in my head of how I'm going to at least get my private. And then I wasn't confident that I wanted to become an actual, professional pilot, but I thought I'm going to start with my private pilot, see where that goes. I'll try to pay cash for it, and then move on from there. But of course, COVID hit, and I got furloughed from United, so that changed everything for me. I ended up moving from my base in Chicago to Scottsdale, Arizona, just because I wanted to go somewhere warmer. I thought, if I'm going to be furloughed like the 9/11 flight attendants were for, 7-8 years, some of them, I want to be somewhere that I am enjoying. So I'm going to just move to a vacation spot. But I got called back 4 months later. I ended up commuting back and forth from Phoenix to Chicago for a few months as a reserve flight attendant, which was just a nightmare. But that, being in the Phoenix area, I didn't realize until I was there that this is a hot spot for flight training, and I really have my pick of schools here. So my only real understanding of the aviation world at that time was airlines. So I just started looking into airline programs. Got accepted initially into the United Aviate program, but I also applied to the American Airlines program. I ended up going with that one just because it was a little more established at the time. The United program had just opened, and I would have been in probably the first or second class. So I went with the American one. I changed loyalties, but I couldn't have asked for, well, actually I could have asked for a better experience. Sometimes I've talked about my experience a little bit on my social platforms, but all in, I'm just so thankful that I did that I made the leap. I had to quit my flight attendant job to go full time, but about 1.5 years later, I was a flight instructor.
That's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about people that might be thinking about flight attendant or just that path in general. We'll definitely get into pilots, but I feel like it's maybe it's just because of where I'm around, but I've never really heard like the path of how do you get hired, and how and most of aviation typically is having the mentor to kind of show you the trodden path of getting there. And I know it's a very fulfilling career, and there are some people that I serve with in the military that do it. But like, if somebody's thinking about, hey, I want to dip my foot into aviation, I'm not necessarily thinking about being a pilot, but traveling the world sounds pretty cool. How would they start that?
So the way I did it, I applied to every major airline that I could think of that had open applications. You really can't be picky especially when you're just starting out and you don't really know the industry yet. I didn't have any inside scoop or anyone to recommend me. So it was really just, putting my application in everywhere. I knew though that after looking at the pay scales that I was not even going to attempt regionals, just because the pay, I think it has not improved much even now, 6-7 years later. But at the time, especially, it was just so unbelievably low that I was like, I can't live on that. So I have to go mainline. They make nearly double what a regional does in some cases. So that first, you have to know what you want. You also have to look at where the base is. You have to be willing to move to literally anywhere that these airlines serve. So keep that in mind. But once I narrowed it down, then it was really just, the main Delta, American, United. I was open to all of those. And I think Southwest as well. I put in an application there. It came down to who invited me to training first. I actually went through rounds of interviews with Delta and United probably almost a year prior and got thanks but no thanks from both. What I didn't understand at the time is that the flight attendant pool of applicants is actually really highly competitive because 10 or 20,000 people may apply for like 500 spots. So it can be crazy sometimes. But I think also what helped me was just I think Facebook is still big, but it was like really big for my age group at the time in like, you know, the 2015 to 2018 kind of region. So I was getting into Facebook groups for aspiring flight attendants. I was just reading people's posts about interview questions they'd gotten, watching YouTube videos, just anything that I could think of. I was just trying to gather information about how to be a successful candidate. What do I wear? What color do I paint my nails? Like those details seems crazy to like go in on every little part of it, but that's really what you have to do a lot of times to make yourself stand out in such a big pool of applicants.
Yeah, it's funny that I mentioned that because it's the same thing for the airline pilot side. I fly for the Air Force National Guard. I've got no intentions of going to the airlines. You know, I have a Garmin avionics dealership and 145 repair station here, but everyone that I fly with in the airlines, I mean, they've got to do the exact same thing to make themselves, you know, pretty much attractive to the airlines, right? They're how their documents look, which planes they flew, everything's got to be spot on. They've got like what we call as gouge, the notes, the details, and that's hidden info, like what you're saying, with even down to your nails, right? So somebody that walks in that has no clue, they're behind the eight ball, and that's why I say too, if you're trying to get into aviation, for the listeners, or you have like a nephew or a niece or you know, a daughter, son, or whoever, the best thing to do is try to find somebody that's already done this, already flew for the airlines, already been a flight attendant, already flew for the military or just civilian pilot, and it's a trodden path that you can get the notes on, and it can save you, you know, a lot of time, a lot of money, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many people that have gone before you as well that I've heard it said a lot that success leaves clues. And I think that's 100% true, especially in the airlines. Like, get to know people, but if you can't get to know people directly, like what have they written? What have they posted? What have they shared? There's just a lot of good information out there. There's also interview prep companies and resume review companies. All of that, those people are really, they're at the top of their game as well, and they know what recruiters are looking for.
Yeah. And the neat thing too about the community is, you know, oftentimes you may reach out to somebody out of the blue, and they, for no reason, they don't know you, and they're willing to take a few minutes and go through that with you. Okay, you want to be an Air Force pilot. Here's the path that most people take. Or you want to be an airline pilot, or, you know, and for no reason. The aviation community, I'm sure I know there's knuckleheads around, but for the most part, you know, it's been a lot of people that are generous with their time, and because they love aviation and they want more people to join in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really been my experience as well. I think especially the general aviation community is just like so close knit. Even if you don't know people directly, you can easily make friends. It's a really cool place to be.
Yeah. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit. Okay. So you did your time as a flight attendant. You realized you want to be a pilot. How did you go from flight attendant to CFI?
So that's the thing. I love on my social media to give my story about my training experience, to just share with people what this really looks like. And I talk a lot, or I have talked a lot in the past, about like how I funded my training, what the process looks like, how long it took. So I actually did take out a pretty substantial loan to do it, which I don't recommend, to be honest. But at the same time, I know that it did allow me to get through my training really quickly when I was not in a position to pay, $90,000 towards going from zero to CFII. just out of pocket. A lot of people don't have that cash either. So it's a relatable thing. I think a lot of the barrier to entry in aviation and becoming a pilot is financially related from what I've seen. But that did give me my little bit of a start where I was able to just jump right in, quit my job. I had and still have a partner who's very supportive and, makes great money, was able to kind of fund things in our life, keep things going while I did that. So if you're someone who wants to go from 0 to CFII and just plow through all your ratings and get your hours as quickly as possible, I think your support, your network is super important. I wouldn't be anywhere without that. But I also think that you just have to decide basically between, the sacrifices that you're going to make. Are you going to sacrifice time or are you going to sacrifice money? Because you may have to sacrifice a little bit of both, but typically it's one or the other.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's like you could take.
You want to go fast, you're going to have this can be expensive.
Right. You're paying for a master's degree essentially. So you've got to look at it that way, that I'm going to give up a year, 2 years, 3 years of my life to do this and be better for it. But you have to be really dedicated to the process as well. So I started at the end of 2021. I got my private pilot in April 2022, soloed in February, and, certificated in April. Then I think my instrument rating only took like 7 weeks. So I was done with that in like June. And then commercial multi. So my school was really interesting because we did a commercial multi initial and then we did a single engine add-on. We hit a little bit of bump in the road where they paused my part of the training for several months. So that one I didn't actually end up completing until the beginning of 2023. But then from there, it was pretty quick. It was like then a month later, I did my add-on. A month or two after that, I did my CFI. A month after that, I did double I. So then it was kind of like quick succession from there. It was about a year and a half all in, a little bit more than that. And it was a school that was dedicated to creating airline pilots. And this is for all programs. So the school itself was CAE out of Falcon Field. And at the time, I don't really know what their programs look like now, but at the time they had my program, American Airlines. They also had JetBlue, Southwest, JAL, Japan Airlines. They had a lot of international airlines as well. So there was just students from all over. But I think what really helped me in the process, just staying focused, staying dedicated to it, was that everyone was there to become a professional pilot. So everyone had a very professional demeanor. Everyone was taking the lessons and the studying very seriously. We were flying, when things were going the way they were supposed to, we were flying multiple times a week, and I loved the pace of that. So I think there's something to be said about whether you go to an airline affiliated program or not, because I don't think at all that that's the only way to be successful as a professional pilot. Whether you go to that type of program or not, I think it's important to surround yourself with people who have similar goals and aspirations, who can inspire you and keep you on track. You learn so much from just watching other people and kind of going step by step alongside other people in a similar way.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. And if you want to go as fast as possible, you're pretty much, I don't know any other way than trying to go to one of those airline affiliated schools and spending a lot of money. I will say, just because I'm in this every day and I see a lot of different paths. My path was, and I just want to toss the plug out there for anyone listening. I got my private pilot's license. So I joined the military as an enlisted mechanic to start with, got a sign-on bonus. I took the sign-on bonus, like the entire check, and gave it to my flight instructor, got my private, and then worked on my degree, which the Air Force National Guard helped pay for. And then by the time I had my bachelor's, I had my private and some hours, and it made me attractive to my Guard unit to where I've already served there, and then, let the Air Force pay for the rest of my ratings. It's the neat thing, just like where probably the program that you went, it decreased the amount of hours that you needed. Is that right, Carly? So down to 1,000. Same thing in the military, right? It took me longer. Where Carly's able to do this, and how long did it take you to get through all that?
I think it was something like 20 months. It was a little over a year and a half.
Where it took me 7 years. Right. So to get through, but it was a lot more economical. And I had to, I was a mechanic first. I had to take on a different role. So there are multiple ways to get through this. There are other ways too, where I see people, when I was young, I'd just sweep hangars, like go around, I'd just be around the airport, and I'd go and I'd sweep somebody's hangar and find a rental plane somewhere. Eventually you'll find somebody that's got a 152 that just wants somebody to put hours on it. if you'll find some sort of trade-off, and you can build hours that way. And once you get your CFI, that's your ticket to start, really actually building some hours. And so there are a lot of different paths, and I encourage you, if you're listening and this is something that you're interested in, it's definitely doable. And ultimately get around the airport, get around somebody like Carly or me, where they're at the airport and you're just like, hey, I want to do that too.
Totally. People also love to split time because it benefits everyone. If you want to be a safety pilot, or, however you're going to work that out, split fuel costs. It just is a great way for everyone to get like a little bit cheaper hours, because we all know it adds up. But I also was going to say that there are ways that you can still go fast. I think people worry that, if I'm not in an airline program, if I don't go to ATP, that I'm going to take forever. But there are people who go through traditional Part 61 programs that you can still realistically complete all of your ratings in, 2 years or something like that.
It's definitely true. I see it. It's just, it's just time and money, right? Like and it is doable. So I agree with you.
Yeah. And it's still going to be expensive, but it's not going to be as expensive. I mean, just for a quick, relative comparison, I think the breakdown of my private pilot cost over $30,000 just for private pilot. And that was just the standard. I wasn't an unusual case in that scenario. But by comparison, when I take someone through private pilot as a Part 61 instructor now, I quote them around 14 or 15,000 to do the whole thing. And, sometimes it's maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but if you cut that in half of what I paid, then you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's funny, when I did mine, I spent, because I did mine Part 61. I think I got mine done in 8,000, but that was a long time ago.
That's pretty jealous of that. That's 10 multi-hours now.
Yeah, that's right. That's funny. Okay, so you got your CFI, and you came back, and then from there you started building hours, instructing, and you purchased your aircraft. Is that timeline right?
Yeah. So I actually, when I first moved back to Tennessee, it was a weird, we were looking for houses in Phoenix, and I was going to stay on and instruct at that school. That was my plan. But then just twist of fate, and the house next door to my parents came up for sale. We had lived in Nashville previously, but we never lived out in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee like we do now. So just kind of took the leap of faith and moved out here. We wanted the land, and it was way, way cheaper than buying in Phoenix too. And I just started looking all over the place, but I was finding pretty quickly that I was going to have at least an hour commute to any flight instructor job that I could find in the area. So I got really, really lucky, and the closest airport to me is Sparta, Upper Cumberland, about, half hour from my house. And there's a little rental company there that I was able to partner up with right away. And so they were just thrilled to bring on new instructors and just be able to funnel students to me when they had, gaps in availability. So I got super lucky just finding the right setup, because it can be tough to find the right CFI job, especially right out of training when you're super low time and not yet very competitive.
That's exactly right. Talk to me about aircraft ownership, because most of what I do is coach new aircraft owners, because they get their airplane, and the first person that they run into other than their CFI is the maintenance shop. And so normally it's, I have to put an arm around and walk them through welcome to aviation.
Yeah, I'm man, I wish I met you sooner. I need you in my corner. So I purchased the aircraft with my family. My parents were the primary owners on the aircraft, just because, I was coming out of flight school fresh off 90 grand in student loans. So I was not in a healthy position to buy an airplane, but they shocked me because I didn't expect them to want to buy an aircraft, but they were like, you know what, we want to learn, we want to fly with you. So we just kind of went in on ownership together, and I've taken over like primary responsibility for handling maintenance and all those things. And I'm the only licensed pilot in my family, so I'm everybody's CFI, but that's been really fun for me. So we actually, through my uncle, who was the retired American Airlines captain, we met up with a broker who was a friend of his, and I cannot recommend enough working with a good broker to get an aircraft. At least that's been my experience. I think we paid him like $5,000 commission, but that got us, he shopped for months for us, just like vetting aircraft, combing through logbooks, catching things that I didn't catch, because I would find things online that I thought looked great, and then he would even go see some of them in person for us and say like, no, you got to look out for this and that, and there's metal in the engine, and we're like, oh boy. Having someone on our side that was more prolific in mechanical stuff than I am. And also then he was really good at negotiating. So he saved us probably 10 or 12 grand on the sale price compared to what they were asking. So he was worth his commission in the end. We were really happy with that. And got a great aircraft out of it.
Yeah, that it's really wise. It doesn't matter who it is, but find somebody that has experience in aviation, because, the number statistics, right? There's only like 1% of the population are pilots. And the percentage of those people that owned an airplane is probably, I don't know what that number is, but it's probably like 1% of those people. It's really small. It's not like you can just, your brother, your uncle, or your aunt had owned an airplane, and you just ask them, oh yeah, hey, when you owned an airplane, what do you do? No, it's very difficult to find information on kind of the standard operations procedures in airplanes. Not even talking about flying it. It's just like, how does the sail go? What's a pre-buy? What the heck is a magneto? Like, when do those go out? And
oh yeah, it's a huge learning curve, especially coming from a larger flight school where they did not let us do any kind of maintenance at all. I mean, if we saw something wrong, we would call the mechanics and they'd pull up on their golf cart and say like, go or no go. So we were like, we were pre-flighting, so but we didn't know like what to do. I think they were just kind of teaching us enough to like move forward, but not enough that, I had never put oil in the engine, because if the oil was low, I'd call maintenance and the golf cart would show up.
They need you to get your pilot's license as fast as possible, not worry about the maintenance stuff.
They're like, we do not have time to show you how to put oil in, like just call the maintenance guy. So all that kind of stuff was handled, and it was very cushy, passenger princess life for me. But then I had to figure out, how am I going to do this myself now that I have primary responsibility over the maintenance and airworthiness?
Yeah. And so, from my experience as a maintenance shop, right, recommendations, whether or not you work with me or not, do a pre-buy on an airplane. Do the pre-buy, hire a broker. It is worth the money. There's so many planes where that I'll bring it in for a pre-buy and find that it's got the wrong propeller on it or the wrong engine on it. And then now they got to replace the engine, and they bought it sight unseen or something crazy like that, Yeah. I've had one where they thought the engine had, luckily they came to me for the pre-buy, but they thought the engine had a certain amount of hours, but actually it was 600 more than that.
Oh,
and
no.
600 more hours. And so they were able to go back to the buyers and be like, hey, this, we need to do some negotiating, right? Because at some point, one mechanic missed one number, and then all the other mechanics for like decades on went with that one number. It was off by 600 hours.
Oh man.
Something crazy like that. And those are all the things that you just don't know. So, and you're buying an airplane that's like, maybe not nowadays, depending on the plane, but I mean, it's like the investment of a house. And then, okay, so there's the dollar investment. There's also like your life investment and your friends that you're going to put in the plane. Get the pre-buy and pay the money to know exactly where the plane is at before you go ahead and put your family in it.
Yeah, absolutely. That saved us from a bad buy too, because like I was saying, like metal in the engine was like a real thing that we found, and one that we almost bought. I think we were like very close to coming to like a purchase agreement, and then did the pre-buy inspection, and it came back like, oh, you're gonna have to do an engine overhaul if you buy this, and we were not, about to mess with that. So we just wanted to buy something that was ready to fly, and that was not.
Yeah. Most of the people, the only other interactions they have with stuff like this is like a boat or a motorcycle or something. And so like, why the heck does it need an annual inspection? Why does it need a pre-buy? I didn't do a pre-buy on my boat. And it's like, well, dude, this is way different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can keep floating if there's engine problems.
Yeah, that's right.
You only got so long to glide, so.
Yep. And then not to mention, it's like, well, why the heck did that break? And it's like, well, because it's an airplane and stuff breaks all the time on airplanes. Just get used to it.
Yeah.
Well, why? Specifically, if you want to get into it, it's because it's low quantity manufacturing. Where like cars, they pump out like 10,000 alternators a minute probably or something. They're only pumping out, one, I think Sears sells most airplanes and they're selling like 800 in a year. And a full year. And so, it's low quantity manufacturing and it's hand built. So, whoever it was, Frankie or Susie or whoever was building that component that you had that day, their spouse or significant other was, yelling at them, and that's the one that you got.
That's so true when you put it that way.
And so I try to like break it down for them, and they're like, "Oh, okay." It's not like your car where you just like hit the button and it goes like perfect every time.
Yeah, and there's a deal around every corner and all that. Yeah, and we just had a wake-up call with maintenance recently. We had our annual done at the end of May, but it rolled into like all of June, and it was because our cylinder head on the number 3 cylinder had to be replaced. And that was our first like pricey thing that we had to do, where we thought we said the wrong words and said like, I think this annual is going to be cheaper than last year's annual, and then it was not. It was 3 times more than last year's annual.
Now, what I will say, you should be able to get it though, whether or not it's more or less expensive. You should be able to get after about 2 to 3 annuals under the airplane. You should be able to get it to where it's mostly scheduled maintenance, not unscheduled, as in something breaks while you're on the road, like an alternator goes out or something like that. If you can get it down to scheduled maintenance where you're not having to pull it in and cancel flights because of unnecessary things. And the reason for that is typically, the person that did own it, the last thing that you do when you start thinking about selling something is you stop putting money in it.
Yeah, we had an unusual scenario actually where the last owner unfortunately was, I think, terminally ill. So they had done an engine upgrade fairly recently, probably just like 2 years before. And the Warrior normally has 160 horsepower, but they had upgraded it to a 180. So it performs a little more like an Archer speed-wise.
Nice.
And, and it only had like 180 hours on the engine. So we were pretty lucky there.
Nice. Well, Carly, this has been an awesome time. Like, what's next for you? What's on the horizon for you?
Oh gosh, well, we didn't even really touch on it, but I actually started a new job about 3 months ago. I'm working with ForeFlight in their marketing department, which has been incredible. I've loved it. It's completely different than being a CFI, but I just decided at some point that I'm not so much on the airline path anymore, and I just have really loved my time in GA. So just renewed my CFI for the first time last month, and I'm just, instructing on the side, flying for fun, and kind of getting the inside scoop on the aviation tech world, which has been amazing.
That's awesome. And so were you at Oshkosh? Were you able to be at their booth kind of like
yeah, I was the new kid that immediately got sent to do all the fun stuff. Everybody's like, how long have you been here? I'm like, yeah, I just, I asked if I could come, and they said, okay. So, but they love to send, marketing people, but also people who are pilots and can talk about the product from a use, a regular use perspective. It was so fun. I'd never been to Oshkosh before, so it was awesome to be able to go.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of funny. This is like one of the first years that I think Garmin's been doing it for a while, but like this was the year of the influencer, I feel like. And I noticed like Garmin and Cirrus and Diamond and all these other companies, they had a whole lineup of influencers down the line.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I'm like in the world now, but I've noticed that too. And part of that, I feel like aviation just in general is kind of like a slow moving industry. So maybe they're just now kind of waking up to the influencer world and how impactful that can be. Because yeah, I agree. There has been a huge, I would think a huge presence of influencers recently in aviation.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I think you're really driving the community. I obviously use ForeFlight. I love it, and I don't know of anything else that could possibly compare.
I've always used ForeFlight from day one of my training, so that's just all I knew. And I mean, I feel like when I explain it to my non-aviation friends, I'm like, I know you've never heard of this company, but like I feel like I work for Google. Like that's how cool it is to me.
It is incredible what they're able to do, and so I wish you the best there. And I hope you're. One more time, what's the best way people can see you? What's your handle on? And I'm going to post it, but just so you can say it, so if anyone's listening, your handle on TikTok or Instagram.
Sure. So I'm at Carly Chamerlik, just my first and last name on pretty much every platform. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And then also my website, carlychamerlik.com, is just where you can find whatever I'm up to right now. And I have got a couple free resources, new student checklists, and just things to help people get started in aviation.
That's awesome. Carly, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to my podcast. And I wish nothing but the best for you. I know you're going to crush it, and you're inspiring a lot of other people to join aviation. Like myself, I view myself as kind of an aviation proselytizer. I just want more people to join into the fun. And so I really appreciate what you're doing out there in the industry. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, James. It's been such a good time.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Another episode of the James Spearman Show. Tune in next week for another great guest that we'll have on in aviation and unique backgrounds. Happy flying.